If you're out there building a home gym and your idea of that home gym is to put a treadmill in your basement and call it a day, or put an elliptical in your garage and call it a day, this episode is for you. Today we're going to talk about resistance training and not only why it's important, but how you can actually fall in love with resistance training and want it in your gym. Because what I found when I talk to people building home gyms, they don't just want that treadmill because they love cardio. They just think cardio is less offensive than lifting weights or doing some type of resistance training, right? They just don't want to train with weights, and there's a variety of reasons. So today on the GymCrafter podcast, we're going to talk specifically about that. I'm going to share some stories from friends and family and some clients that I train about how they went from hating lifting weights or hating resistance training to falling in love with it and looking forward to doing it every day, which is one of the best habits you can build in your life. Hey everybody, it's Tim from GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks build home gyms that we absolutely love and use all the time. And boy, today's episode of the GymCrafter podcast plays into that directly. Today we're going to talk about how to fall in love with resistance training. If you remember episode 1, I talked a lot about the 3 things that go into any home gym, which is space to train, resistance to train with, and some type of an indoor cardio option. Those 3 things you must have if you're going to be training for life, if you're going to be training for health, if you're going to be training to be better at life, right? And for me, I went from hating resistance training to not only loving it, but for me, there's a bright red line that says training involves lifting weights for me, but doing some type of resistance training. That's a non-negotiable. When I train folks and they want a cardio program or they want to lift 5-pound weights all day long, that's not going to cut it. If you want to achieve the results you want in life, then resistance training has to be part of that. So like I said, I asked a bunch of people and I got a bunch of feedback, and I want to kind of divide that feedback into 2 parts. First of all, there were a lot of commonalities, right? There were a lot of things that people said that were in common with each other in different forms. So I want to go over those first, because I think that a lot of people who are resistant to resistance training have these things in common. We all thought these things at the beginning. And it's important, number 1, to know that, hey, you're not alone and that lots of people have these thoughts. But B, that these are things that will help you to actually fall in love with resistance training. So where does that start? First of all, no one that I talk to, now I know there's a few people out there and you are extremely lucky that you liked resistance training from day one. I know some of you that the first day you touched a weight, you're like, this is for me, boy. Give me 3 tubs of pre-workout and a weight room and I'm ready to go, right? So, and that's awesome. I'm so happy that you found it much easier than everybody else, but I would tell you that you're the minority. You're the exception, not the rule. Most people don't start out liking resistance training. It's hard. It's painful. It's embarrassing in some situations, right? It's possibly injury prone. We're going to talk about all those things a little bit more in depth. But here's the first thing that really kind of everybody had in common, which is at some point they had to go, okay, this is something that I need to do for my health. Here's how I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to have to suck it up and stick with it for a little bit until I find a way to like it. So one of the people that I talked to brought up a quote from a guy named Dave Ramsey. He's a financial advisor, kind of a crotchety old man, if you want to call him that. But he gives this piece of advice that one of the people that I talked to said stuck in their mind for the first entire year, and they still think about it, which is children do what feels good. Adults devise a plan and follow it. And if you think about that, we all, as we grow and we age and we mature, we come to a point where we go, if we're going to be any good at this thing called life, if we're going to live long, if we're going to live good lives and we're going to be able to enjoy ourselves as much as possible and be good parents and brothers and friends, we're going to have to do some things we don't like, right? None of us wants to get up and go to work every day for the most part. None of us wants to go and lift weights at first for the most part. And this person thought of that particular quote every day for at least a year. And I think that makes a lot of sense, which is, yeah, we can all just choose to sit on the couch and play video games all day long like children, or we can suck it up and do some things that are unpleasant because the benefits of those things down the road are worthwhile. So that's something that was really overarching among everybody, was that, hey, I had to find a way, whether it's that quote or something else, to just start. And I'm going to tell you that you just got to start. Even if you just go into the gym and stand there for 5 minutes every day and build the habit, I promise once you go in there and you're standing there for 5 minutes, you go, well, I'm here. I might as well pick up this weight and do something with it, right? But you got to find a way to start. Once you start, some other things take over. So here's a couple other things that were in common with everybody. One of the first things that I heard from a lot of people was there's a light bulb moment for a lot of folks where they realize that lifting weights is not bodybuilding. And unfortunately with social media, everybody who's in a weight room is trying to get jacked and swole, and they're showing off their butts and they're flexing in the right light in the back. That's awesome for those people, and if that's what motivates those people, and you're one of those people, and your looks motivate you, and being big and huge and jacked and cut and all, that's awesome. If that's what keeps you going and that's what makes you happy, you keep doing that, that's fantastic. Again, you're the exception, not the rule. If that was the rule, we wouldn't have so many unhealthy people in this world, right? So when people realize that lifting weights is much more about capability than it is looks, wow, that switch flipped a lot of them and got them into the gym. And what I mean by capability is they're more capable on the golf course. They're more capable fathers. They're more capable mothers. They're more capable on an airplane putting a bag over their head. They're putting a bag over their head, putting a bag in overhead storage. They're more capable at all parts of life. They're more capable of playing with their kids. They're more capable of playing with their grandkids. They're more capable of going to work and coming home and not being beat up and needing to go straight to bed. That list goes on forever. It's not about getting big, right? If you get strong, you're gonna get big along with it. But if you get strong, you're gonna be so much more capable at life. And that's something that, if you realize that early on, that it's not about, I had one of the guys say, I used to think, when the heck am I ever gonna need to bench press my way out of a bad situation, right? Like, he didn't get the point. A lot of people even said, I never understood, why am I coming in here and picking up this thing off the ground and then putting it back down and then picking it up? Like, that's dumb, right? Like, just to be bigger? Well, I'm not gonna do that. That's unpleasant, no. And as soon as they realized that it wasn't about being big and it's about being capable, wow, that got a lot of folks going. So if you can come to that realization and understand all of the benefits that it provides you, and look, I'm not going to touch on it in this episode, but there are so many benefits of strength training. Doctors are prescribing strength training to many different cohorts of patients. There are study after study after study coming out showing all of the benefits of strength training, and literally every aspect of your life gets better with strength training. So when people realize that, it motivates them. Another big one was understanding that resistance training doesn't have to be a barbell and a power rack, right? It could be calisthenics, it could be gymnastics, it could be yoga for strength. And anybody who just snickered, go try yoga for strength. I promise you, you can get brutally strong doing that. Pilates, there's all different modes. You don't have to get under a barbell. Now, I would tell you that over time, most of these folks, even though they started in a different modality, even though they started with kettlebells, even though they started with, sandbags or whatever it happened to be, they all found their way under a barbell at some point because that barbell made them better at that other thing that they found. But there are so many different ways to do resistance training. I think it's important to recognize that that's one of the ways to get yourself into the gym and to really start enjoying what you're doing, is by understanding that it may not be a barbell or dumbbells at first. It may be some other mode. Another big one was the realization that you are not very likely to get injured in the gym if you're lifting with good form. And it doesn't take a lot to learn good form. If you're going to be an Olympic lifter, it does. If you're going to be a CrossFitter, sometimes it does. But for the most part, what most folks do in their home gyms isn't dangerous. You're not going to get hurt. I'm sitting in front of a Smith machine as an example. I spent the first 3 years running GymCrafter. Every email I got asking me to review Smith machines or which Smith machine I could get, my answer was a long diatribe of why you shouldn't use a Smith machine. I'm sure a lot of you can probably repeat the points that I listed in that email. And what I realized after almost every one of those people bought a Smith machine anyway, was that they were deathly afraid of getting injured. And that fear of injury is something that keeps a lot of people from resistance training. So number one, if you lift with proper form and you lift within your means and you don't lift to failure, right? Not to absolute failure, you're probably not going to get hurt in the gym. You are much more likely to get injured outside of the gym than you are in the gym. I've pulled my neck drying my head, right? It happens. Parents, you throw out your back, turning around to reach your kids in the back seat. But you don't do that in the gym because we're focused on proper form. And that's a really important thing to understand. And to compound that point, you're not only much more likely to get injured outside the gym than in, you are exponentially more likely to get injured outside of the gym if you never go to the gym and train with resistance in the first place. Resistance training is one of the best ways to prevent injuries. And if you do happen to get injured, having a long period of resistance training under your belt helps you heal faster. It helps you recover faster from the times that you do get injured. So it's really the opposite of what a lot of people think. And that's another light bulb moment a lot of the folks I talked to had was they said, when I realized that I wasn't gonna get hurt, you know, I think some people, they watch YouTube or the Instagram, did I just show how old I am? They watch Instagram and they see somebody put 500 pounds on their back or they see somebody deadlift 1,100 pounds. They're like, I'm gonna die if I do that, right? And they don't wanna die, so they don't build a home gym with resistance training in it. So that's another overarching point is just you're not gonna get hurt in the gym if you do it right and you have the proper equipment and just a little bit of the proper instruction. The last thing that a lot of people brought up was that they went from thinking that the environment that they were gonna train in was gonna be negative to finding an environment that they like training in. And what I mean by that, there's two aspects of this. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are new to resistance training are embarrassed to go to a gym. They don't understand that good gym culture would welcome them. And I think good gym culture, unfortunately, is fewer and far between than it used to be. You know, when I started lifting, I went to some pretty dingy, like dungeon-like powerlifting gyms, A, to try out some of the equipment they had, but B, just to learn to lift because I didn't want to die, just like I just said. And I haven't found a more supportive group of guys than those guys who looked like they just got out of prison and went straight to that gym. And I'm not knocking them, they just look like a mean bunch of guys. But they were helpful, they were supportive, they didn't care how much I could lift. They were just thrilled that I was there and I was open and willing to ask questions and willing to learn from their experience. So if you decide to go to a gym, look for one with a good culture. You can ask for free day passes when you're trying out different gyms to see if you like it. And see if people are there are helpful. See if people there are, or see if people are all there with their headphones on and their tripods up and they have no interest in helping you out. But if you can find a good gym culture, and this is one of the things that CrossFit did so well. I talked to so many people who CrossFit is what got them into lifting weights because the community was there. Now, I've got my issues with CrossFit and I'm gonna pick on them here and there, but one of the things that they did really well was that they got an awful lot of people who never would have touched a barbell or a dumbbell or a weight plate under a bar and loving it. And a big part of that was the community. For the folks who can't find a gym with good culture, that's where building a home gym comes into play. That's where training in a garage like I train come into play, where you can build stuff that's specifically for you, you can listen to the music that you like, you can keep it at the cleanliness level that you like, and you can train in a manner that you decide you want a Smith machine, you can put in a Smith machine, right? And nobody's gonna say boo, right? You can come in and you can train on this piece right here that I've got behind me that a lot of folks wouldn't buy, but a lot of folks that I've shown this thing, they're like, wow, that'd be awesome. You can train in an environment that you like, you're much more likely to resistance train because you're gonna be comfortable. And that's why I harp so much on building a home gym that has resistance in it. So those are the kind of overarching points, the commonalities that everybody had in common. So let's take a look at, I've got some quotes by these 5 people and some stories that they kind of told me. So I want to kind of touch on specific examples of how these 5 fell in love with resistance training, because I think there's something in here for everybody and it'll maybe spark your mind and maybe some ways that you can start looking at resistance training in a different light. First one is my friend Meg. Meg told me, and I wrote it down here, I found my friend group at CrossFit. If I wanted to see my friends, I had to go to the gym. If I wanted to beat them, I had to get good at WODs. That shows 2 things, and again, you're gonna see some throwbacks to callbacks to the commonalities that I listed. Number 1, Meg found a form of training that she loved, right? She loved being in that friend group. She found a good environment to train in, and she found people that she liked to go see, and if she wanted to see them, they were in the gym. That's where they were. So she started to associate the good things about having this new friend group to the training that went along with it. And I can tell you from experience that there is probably very few ways to train that are less pleasant than CrossFit. It's not for me. You couldn't pay me to do it. I don't think I want to be in a gym with a puke bucket in the corner, but for Meg, it worked really well. She really liked it. And it also sparked something else. Meg is very competitive. She's one of the most competitive. She's more competitive than any guy I know, and that's not a sexist statement. It's just typically guys are more competitive, at least outwardly so. Meg is more competitive than anybody that I know. So when she walked into that CrossFit gym where there are leaderboards on the wall, that is all it took. She told me all I had to do was see those leaderboards and start asking, how do I get my name at the top of those things? And right now at Meg's gym, her name is at the top of most of those leaderboards. To give you an example of how competitive Meg is, she ripped all of the skin off of her hands to get herself to the top of the kipping pull-ups board. Don't get me started on kipping pull-ups, but that's a board. She wanted to be on the top. She wore all the skin off of her hands getting there. So if competitiveness is something that you can that motivates you, then find a way to be competitive, whether that's training with a lifting partner, whether that's going to someplace like CrossFit, or whether that's if you build a home gym like this, getting involved with your family and your friends and your kids and your wife, and maybe even just being competitive with yourself. I keep PRs like a lot of people do, and every once in a while I'll try. Now I don't have the same PR list as everybody does. Like one of mine is a dead hang. Like how long can I hang from a bar without letting go? I try and beat myself at that all the time. So adding a little bit of competitiveness into the lifting. So Meg, I think, tells a good story of finding that environment. Finding competitiveness really helped her go from not liking lifting because she had tried other types of lifting before, and somebody at a regular gym said, hey, why don't you come try CrossFit? I think you'd like it. And she literally in a day went from not liking being in the gym to loving being in the gym. So there's a really great story of a couple of ways that you can do that. Next one is from a client of mine named Matt, who's a golfer, and he trains specifically. When I said, you train to be capable, Matt trains to be capable on the golf course. Golf is everything to Matt. He's swinging a golf club every day, period, end of story. And what he had said was, I wanted to be like Tiger Woods, and he lifted. I couldn't tell you the benefits then, but I can now, and I wouldn't stop for anything. And what Matt learned was the way that strength training translates to the golf course are in two areas: energy leaks and balance. The way that you hit a golf ball far and accurately is you have no loose spots in the kinetic chain from your feet all the way out to your hands and where it holds the golf club. The stronger you are, the more of your energy transfers from the ground through your hips, through your torso, to that club head and creates club head speed. And the stronger you are, the more you're able to keep that club stable through a faster swing. So what Matt found was that without working on his golf swing, that he increased his drive distance and accuracy. He increased all of his distance and accuracy across all of the clubs, and he even increased his putting accuracy because of balance. He was much more able to stay balanced and centered over the ball because he trained. So this is a great example of just one way that strength training converts to capability in real life. And for Matt, it's golf. For you, it might be tennis. For me, it's disc golf. I found that when I train for balance and stability, that I throw the disc much farther and much more accurately than when I stop doing that for a while. It's as glaring as it could possibly be. So if you play a sport or you do anything that requires any type of physical ability at all, whether it's softball or whether it's anything else, training with weights or training with resistance of some kind is going to translate directly to that. So all of a sudden, Matt went from, I don't really like being in the gym, I don't understand why I'm doing this, but Tiger Woods does it, to all of a sudden, if I train these specific things with weight and with resistance, and we do a lot of like step up to toe touches. Just really, like if you want to improve your golf game, just take a plyo box, do a single, just step up on it, and then excruciatingly slowly raise yourself up on one foot, stay on one foot, bend down and touch that toe with your hand, stand back up and lower yourself slowly to the ground. I'm talking slow. It's very hard at first, but just that one exercise has given Matt so much more stability, so much more core strength, so much more balance. His ankles are more stable, his knees are more stable, and that translates to those other things. So he always wants to do that exercise, right? Now that's not lifting a barbell, that's not lifting a kettlebell, but that's doing something that results in something that he wants more than anything in life, which is to be a scratch golfer. When you start seeing what you're doing in the gym with resistance training, and you can tie the movements that you're doing directly to results that you're seeing outside of the gym, all of a sudden you're going to see your enjoyment of strength training go up. Now, how does this help somebody building a home gym? It doesn't. You've got to do that Dave Ramsey thing first, which is, okay, adults, devise a plan. My plan is to get better at golf. Now, how am I going to do that? I'm going to do it with strength training. And at first, you're going to have to suck it up sometimes and just kind of get into the gym and do it enough times until you start seeing results. This is why I'm such a big fan of buying programs from professional trainers. If you just go into the gym with no plan, you're not going to see the results that you want from your adult plan of however you want to see results outside of the gym. That's Matt. I think that's a really good story. Matt went from skipping appointments to, I'll never forget, he just started coming and never missing appointments again. I'm like, dude, what happened? What's you're asking to do certain training movements, which is awesome as a trainer. When you have clients go, I like this, let's do this. It's one of the best things you can have happen. And he told me, he's like, I started to see this result outside of the gym. And I'm like, well, if this gets me this, I really like this now. The next one is another client named Allie. I hated it until we backed, and it being strength training. I hated it until we backed off with regressions. Seeing regular progress has me looking forward to training. Now I focus on executing the movement perfectly instead of trying to hit certain numbers, and my numbers are higher than ever. Allie's issue with strength training was, again, she didn't see the point of just trying to lift a bunch of weight, and this is one of the disservices that a lot of people do. Progressive overload is important, don't get me wrong. This is something that we want to do. We want to get stronger over time. But unfortunately for a lot of people, it becomes the central focus in their training. And for a lot of people, they don't care if they can lift more than they did yesterday. That wasn't important to Allie. Allie liked yoga. So I asked her, I said, why do you like yoga? She goes, well, I'm never going to perfect the movements. I'm never going to perfect the poses, but I like working on it. And I went, I know how to get you to love weight training, because this was a big light bulb moment for me. We started with Turkish get-ups, and we started with no weight. What I did was I took a sandal, a flip-flop, and had Allie hold her hand up, and we put the flip-flop on top of her hand, and I taught her Turkish get-ups. To this day, a couple years later, Allie does Turkish get-ups with a shoe on her hand every morning because she's trying to perfect the movement. She uses a shoe now because it's more top-heavy and it can fall off easier. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to do the perfect Turkish get-up. Through doing that, she is now able to do Turkish get-ups with a significant amount of weight. And the reason why she enjoys moving up that progressive overload ladder now is every time you think you've got the movement dialed, when you add weight, that weight exposes the parts of that movement that aren't perfect. When we put a little bit more weight, we give her a heavier kettlebell. We go, okay, you've got the 35-pound kettlebell down. And it took her a while to get the 35 down. I said, let's go up 5 pounds and we'll go to a 40-pound kettlebell. Immediately, there were 2 parts of her Turkish get-up that were like a little bit wobbly, and she goes, oh, now I see. So she even would back off and go, I need to work on those specific parts. So that's a long way of saying that if you can find a way to fall in love with perfecting the movement, whether that's perfecting a back squat, whether that's perfecting a deadlift, whether that's perfecting the Turkish get-up, whether that's perfecting a kettlebell swing, whatever movement you want to do, an overhead press. Overhead presses with kettlebells are a great one. Bottoms up presses, where you have the kettlebell upside down, are really good for teaching people this. And what happens is your mind gets so involved in learning the movement that you forget that you're adding weight. And if you're just doing the movement, over time, you naturally get stronger. Pavel Tsatsouline, who is known as the father of the kettlebell, really talked a lot about this. He said progressive overload in kettlebells is much different than progressive overload for bodybuilders. Progressive overload for kettlebells, you train with a lower weight kettlebell until it feels really, really, really light. Way past when a bodybuilder would have moved up their weight. You train until that weight feels like it's nothing, and then you go up to the next weight that's challenging, and then you do the same thing with that weight. And you do that by focusing on your form. So again, if you can find a way to fall in love with coming in and going, I'm not going to go into deadlift and try and hit 300 pounds today. I might only put 135 on the bar, right? But I'm going to work on these 2 things in my form. I'm going to work on pushing the ground away from my feet. I'm going to work on keeping my head down and focusing on one spot on the floor. Whatever the thing is that you need to do better, that's something that can keep you coming back into the gym and looking forward to resistance training without being miserable and going, oh, I only got 305 up today. I really was hoping I could get 325. If you detach from the numbers and you attach to the form, I can't tell you how many people I've helped with that particular tip, that they absolutely love going into the gym now and training with some type of resistance. My friend Joe, people misunderstand, and by the way, my friend Joe is a deacon, so you'll understand why I mentioned that in this explanation. People misunderstand suffering as bad. It's neither good nor bad, but instead it shapes who we are and teaches us to be better people. Every bit of suffering I face in the gym makes me a better person outside the gym. I like being a better person more than I want not to suffer. And that is a spiritual answer for sure, but we all have a spiritual desire inside of ourselves, and that works for a lot of people to understand that good things in life come from hard work and sacrifice. Good things in life come from suffering, right? I wouldn't be doing, I told one story in the first episode about some of my medical issues. I wouldn't be doing this for a living, and I'm happier than I've ever been. I don't make very much money doing this, but I am happier than I've ever been because I'm doing something that I think adds value to the world and helps other people. And I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't gone through a significant amount of suffering in my life. So that's what Joe applies to the gym. So sometimes I hear people go, I'm gonna head into the pain cave today, and I'm like, I don't know that I would call my gym the pain cave. I don't know that I would ever go into it. But for these folks, that's what they're looking at. They're going, I'm going to go in and suffer so that the rest of my life can be better. I'm going to go in and suffer, and I'm going to put myself, and these are the guys, by the way, and Joe is included. Joe can deadlift a lot. Joe can squat over 400 pounds, which is a lot, because he pushes himself that hard. He pushes himself to the point of being uncomfortable. And he deals with uncomfortableness outside the gym better than anybody that I know because of it. So that's something that I thought was important to include. That might not work for everybody, but there are some people out there who are going, that could work for me, right? And the last one I want to bring up is me. For me, I kind of, the form thing was huge for me. Learning to get good at deadlifts is one of the joys. I'll never be perfect at deadlifts, but I really enjoy working on my deadlift form. But for me, it was realizing that life isn't a 12-week program. I think, unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they'll go, well, why am I going to build this type of a thing, just to work out for two? Because I'm going to do a 12-week program. I'm going to get as strong as I want to be, and then I'm going to be done. You're never going to be done. Training is a lifetime pursuit, and it's learning to enjoy the journey and not constantly looking for a destination. When I stopped setting 12-week goals, when I stopped going, okay, I'm going to try this program for 12 weeks, and by the end of this program, I want to be able to do this, this, and this. And I just said, okay, this particular 12-week program I'm doing because it addresses certain issues that I'm dealing with right now, and then I'm going to move on to the next one, and then maybe I'm going to do this for 6 months, and I'm going to do this other thing. But for me, I'm never going to not be in the gym. I'm never going to be done, right? And as soon as I realized that training wasn't about being done, and I think this is why a lot of people yo-yo diet so much, is because they go, okay, I've got to lose 30 pounds, and they're awesome. They lose the 30 pounds. So they go, okay, I got to lose the 30 pounds, so now I can go back to doing what I was before, right? Well, what you did before gets you right back to where you were, and worse sometimes. And we feel bad about ourselves, and we beat ourselves up, and we let it go. Now I got to lose 40 pounds, and the next time I got to lose 50 pounds, and eventually a lot of people give up. When I realized that I was going to come into the gym every day without fail, and I train 6 days a week. I don't train on Sundays, but I train 6 days a week, and I don't miss. Now, does that mean that I lift 6 days a week? No. Today could just be a 10-minute recovery row on my rowing machine, but I do something every day. And as soon as I realized that that was the key, and that it wasn't just trying to get to someplace where I could stop, because it's frustrating, right? Number one, if you get to the place where you're going to stop and you stop, then you go right back to where you were. Or you keep moving that goalpost, right? You're like, oh, I can bench 225 now. Well, let me see if I can get to 250, right? If you take away those goals and you focus on the destination, you can find a lot more enjoyment. And that's where a lot of these things have in common as well, as all of these folks now are focusing on the journey, and they're not focusing on getting to a particular point. So as you're building your home gym and as you're looking to put resistance training in it, don't look at it as, well, what can I use for now? And this is, I think, why a lot of people end up with cheap stuff. They go, well, I'm not going to train forever. I'm just going to train till I lose my 30 pounds. So $200 squat rack from Amazon is fine, right? No, it's not fine. You're just going to have to buy a new one. So don't buy the $200 one from Amazon, because you're going to train for the rest of your life. You're not just going to train until vacation comes. And for me, that was huge. That was one of those big time aha moments where I went, I actually look forward, like I couldn't imagine starting my day without training. I couldn't imagine it. And if you'd have told the younger me that had to force myself to go to the gym that I was going to get to that point, I would have laughed at you. But that was what really helped me enjoy my journey. So that's 5 different stories and some overarching points of how to get involved. What do you guys think? One of the things I've learned as I started doing this podcast is I've made some really closed-minded statements about stuff, and people go, well, what about this? And what about this? And I like this. And I appreciate all those comments. Thank you guys for commenting on the videos and really kind of expanding my point of view on some things. So what do you guys think? What keeps you going in the gym? What was your light bulb moment? When did you go from, I hate this to I love this? Was it a type of training? Did you discover strongman training and you're like, hey, this is the bee's knees, right? Again, I'm old, sorry. But what was it? Was there somebody that you helped? Maybe you liked it all along, but you've seen other people have that light bulb moment. Maybe you were in the CrossFit gym when Meg came in and saw her light up with that. Let me know, let other people know, because I think this is if we can get people to strength train, boy, we solve a lot of problems in this world. And for those of you who strength train regularly, you know what I mean. We solve discipline problems. We solve people being able to get along problems. We solve people not being willing to do hard thing problems. We solve the recruitment problem in the military. We solve all the people protesting because somebody called them a bad name, right? It toughens you in every single way. Help us out. Let us know. Why did you fall in love with training? Why did you fall in love with resistance training? What helped you there? So drop those things in the comment. That's all I've got for this podcast. Again, thank you guys. Episode 4 in the bag. And I'll give you a gym update next time. As you can see, I've got a bunch of stuff going on. If you look behind the camera, it's still a disaster area. So I'm going to get to work on that this week. But that's it for this episode of the GymCrafter podcast. I'm Tim from GymCrafter.